My name is Hailey, I'm 34 years old, and the day my sister-in-law screamed, "You don't need that," marked the start of something I never saw coming. I never thought my quiet life would unravel over something as simple as a trailer. After losing my husband, Owen, 2 years ago, that trailer became more than just a vehicle. It was my refuge, my sanctuary, and the last tangible piece of the life we shared. We'd spent years traveling in it, escaping the noise of the world, and making memories that still haunted its walls. When he passed, I couldn't bring myself to sell it. I parked it on the edge of my small property just outside of Cedar Hollow, and sometimes, on sleepless nights, I'd go sit inside it, breathing in the faint scent of pine from our last trip. When you lose someone, people expect you to move on at their pace, not yours. Owen's family was no different. Especially his sister, Miranda. She was the kind of woman who always believed she knew best. Sharp-tongued, controlling, and convinced that everyone's life was somehow her business. I'd always tried to get along with her for Owen's sake, but even he used to sigh and say, "Miranda means well, but she likes to rearrange other people's lives." After his death, Miranda's visits became more frequent, and less about comfort. At first, she brought casseroles and pitying smiles. Then she started bringing opinions. According to her, my home was too small, my work too inconsistent, and my decision to keep the trailer emotionally unhealthy. I tried to tune her out, focusing on rebuilding my design business from home, but her presence hung over me like a storm cloud that wouldn't move on. When she and her husband, Todd, announced they were moving into a rental house just a few streets away, I felt my stomach sink. "It'll be nice to be close," she'd said, smiling that rehearsed smile that never reached her eyes. I knew what it meant: more unannounced visits, more judgment, and more unwanted advice. At first, it was harmless enough. She'd stop by with coffee or gossip about the neighborhood. But soon, her attention turned toward the trailer. She'd stand by it, hands on her hips, inspecting it like she was evaluating a piece of junk she could flip. "You still keeping this thing?" she asked one morning, her tone halfway between curiosity and disgust. "I am," I said quietly. "It means a lot to me." She snorted. "You don't need that, Hailey. It's just taking up space. You could sell it, use the money for something practical, or give it to someone who'd actually use it." That line stuck with me. "You don't need that." The way she said it wasn't just dismissive, it was territorial, like she already believed it wasn't mine anymore. I brushed it off, told myself she was just being herself, meddlesome, pushy, entitled. But over the next few weeks, her questions became more specific. "What's inside it?" she'd ask casually, pretending to sip her coffee. "You keep anything valuable in there?" "I mean, it looks locked up tight." I'd just shrug and say, "Just memories, nothing worth stealing." I didn't want her to know the truth that Owen had left me an envelope hidden in the glove box. He'd given it to me a week before he died, his voice quiet and serious. "Keep this safe," he'd said. "You'll know when you need it." I never opened it. Maybe I was scared of what I'd find inside. Maybe it was just too soon. Either way, it stayed there, sealed and untouched, tucked away among registration papers and faded travel maps. Miranda didn't need to know about that. No one did. Then one afternoon, I noticed muddy footprints near the trailer's door. I lived alone, and I hadn't been out there in days. My stomach twisted. The prints were small, too small to belong to Todd, and they led right up to the handle. The lock was scratched, like someone had tried to pry it open. My heart pounded as I looked around, half expecting to see someone hiding in the bushes. But there was no one, just the wind moving through the trees. When I mentioned it to Miranda later, she smiled, too quickly. "Probably some kid snooping around," she said. "You should really keep that thing somewhere safer." Her eyes flicked toward the trailer, and something in me went cold. That night, I double-checked the locks and hid the keys in a drawer inside my house. I even draped a tarp over the trailer, hoping to make it look less tempting. But as I stood there in the fading light, staring at the outline of the thing that meant more to me than anyone knew, a chill ran through me. I couldn't shake the feeling that Miranda wasn't done, that she wanted it for reasons that went beyond spite. I didn't realize it yet, but she was already planning to take it. And the secret waiting inside that glove box, the one Owen left for me, was about to turn my quiet life into a storm I never saw coming. That trailer holds more than just memories, it holds a secret I never meant for anyone to find. I first noticed Miranda's obsession when she started showing up uninvited every other day. At first, I told myself it was coincidence, maybe she was just lonely or bored. But after the third time she dropped by without calling, carrying another one of her sugary smile excuses, I knew it wasn't. Each visit felt like an inspection. She'd peer through my kitchen window before knocking, glance around like she was taking inventory of my life, then always make her way to the trailer. It became routine. She'd comment on how old it looked, how pointless it was for a woman like me to keep it. Then she'd change tactics, pretending to be interested. "You know," she said one morning, brushing invisible dust off the trailer's frame. "Todd and I have been thinking of taking some weekend trips. I've been eyeing trailers online, but they're so expensive lately." Her eyes flicked toward mine, waiting for me to offer. I didn't. Instead, I forced a polite smile. "Yeah, they are expensive," I said, walking past her. "Good luck finding one." She didn't take the hint. After that, her questions got personal. She asked how much insurance I had on the trailer, whether it was still in Owen's name, whether I'd considered selling it and putting that money into something useful. When I told her firmly that it wasn't for sale, she frowned like a spoiled child denied a toy. "You're being sentimental," she said. "Owen wouldn't want you to cling to the past like this." I wanted to scream that she had no right to speak for him, but I bit my tongue. Arguing with Miranda was like arguing with a wall that gossiped afterward. One afternoon, I overheard her talking to a neighbor in her driveway. They didn't notice I was within earshot. "She's sitting on something valuable," Miranda was saying. "I know it. Owen left her more than she admits. She doesn't even use that trailer, just keeps it there to make people feel sorry for her." The neighbor murmured something, and Miranda added, "If she doesn't appreciate what she has, maybe someone else should." My hands shook as I quietly backed away. That was the moment I realized her obsession wasn't just about envy, it was about entitlement. From then on, I locked the trailer every night and kept the keys in my bedside drawer. I even installed a small motion light above it, something I never thought I'd need in my peaceful little neighborhood. But even with precautions, I could feel her eyes on me. Sometimes I'd catch her car slowing down in front of my house, her silhouette visible through the window, watching. Todd, her husband, was the opposite, gentle, reserved, and always apologetic for her behavior. One day when Miranda wasn't around, he came by to borrow a wrench. "I'm sorry about her," he said quietly, avoiding eye contact. "She's been different since Owen passed." I just nodded, unsure how to respond. He hesitated before adding, "She misses him too. You know, but she doesn't handle grief well." I almost laughed. "Neither do I," I said softly, handing him the wrench. "But I don't steal other people's memories." He didn't reply. He just sighed and left. Not long after, little things started happening that made me uneasy. A window latch in the trailer looked tampered with. A chair that had been near the kitchenette inside was moved slightly. It could have been my imagination, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Someone had been inside. I decided to take photos of the interior just in case. If anything went missing, I wanted proof. As I snapped pictures of every corner, I found myself lingering near the glove box. I ran my fingers over the worn leather handle, remembering the day Owen slid the envelope inside. I could almost hear his voice again, calm and certain. "Keep it safe. One day, you'll know why." That envelope wasn't about money. I felt that in my bones. It was about something deeper, something that made Miranda's growing interest all the more dangerous. The next day, I caught her standing by the trailer again. This time she wasn't pretending to admire it, she was inspecting it closely, running her fingers along the edges of the door. When she realized I was watching, she startled, then plastered on that fake smile. "Oh, I was just looking at this dent here," she said quickly. "You know, if you ever decide to sell it, Todd and I might take it off your hands. Give it a little love. I kept my voice calm. It's not for sale. She rolled her eyes. You're being ridiculous, Hailey. It's just an old trailer. You don't even use it. Why hold on to something that's just sitting there? Because it's mine, I said simply. Her jaw tightened. For a moment, I saw something in her expression, something sharp and almost cruel. Then she smiled again, too wide, too bright. Suit yourself. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in bed, staring at the faint outline of the trailer through my window blinds. The motion light flicked on once, twice, nothing there when I looked. My pulse wouldn't slow. I finally got up and checked the locks again, whispering to myself that I was just paranoid. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. Miranda wanted something from me, something I didn't even understand yet. I should have known that. Look, Miranda wasn't done. She was just getting started. It happened faster than I could react. One moment the trailer was there, the next it was gone. It was a Sunday morning, quiet and cool, the kind of morning that used to make me miss Owen the most. I'd made a cup of coffee and stepped outside, barefoot, planning to sit on the porch and enjoy a few moments of calm before starting work. But as soon as my eyes moved toward the driveway, my stomach dropped. The patch of gravel where my trailer always sat was empty, completely empty. For a few seconds my brain refused to process it. I blinked, convinced maybe I'd parked it differently, or maybe Todd had moved it for some reason. But the tire tracks were clear, deep impressions where it had been hitched, and another set leading straight down the road. Someone had taken it during the night. My mug slipped from my hand and shattered on the porch steps. I ran to the driveway, heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The padlock I'd installed was lying on the ground, snapped clean in half. My hands trembled as I picked it up, the broken metal cool and sharp against my skin. The first thought that hit me wasn't disbelief, it was rage. I knew who did it. There was no question in my mind. Miranda. I ran inside, grabbed my phone, and called her immediately. It rang 4 times before she picked up, her tone far too casual. Morning, Hailey. Everything okay? Where is it? I demanded. There was a pause. Where's what? My trailer, Miranda. It's gone. Don't play dumb. She gave a small, breathy laugh. Hailey, why would I know anything about that? I could hear something in the background, a faint metallic clank. My pulse quickened. Where are you right now? I asked. Home, she said smoothly. Just having breakfast with Todd. But I knew that wasn't true. I could hear the wind through an open window. And somewhere, faintly, the creak of a door I recognized. The trailer door. Miranda, I said slowly, forcing calm into my voice. If you took it, you need to bring it back right now. She didn't respond. Then she hung up. I stood there frozen for a moment, my hands shaking, before I called the police. The dispatcher was kind but efficient. Ma'am, are you certain it was stolen? Yes, I said, my voice trembling. I have tire tracks. The lock's broken. I know who took it. When the officer arrived, I showed him everything, the broken lock, the tracks, even the recording of Miranda's voice from our call. He nodded slowly, jotting notes on his pad. You said this Miranda is your sister-in-law? I corrected bitterly. She's my late husband's sister, and she's been harassing me about the trailer for weeks, he sighed. Family disputes get messy fast. If it's her, we'll find out. We'll file a report, track any local cameras, and see if it turns up. Can't you just go to her house? I asked. He shook his head. We can't enter private property without a warrant or probable cause. But if you can get a photo or video of the trailer there, that would help. After he left, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I felt powerless. The trailer was the one thing of Owen's I had left, and now it was gone, stolen by the person who'd already taken enough from me through manipulation and cruelty. I called Todd next, hoping for a crack in his voice, something to confirm what I already knew. He sounded tense, almost defensive. Hailey, I swear I don't know anything about this. Miranda's been weird lately, I'll admit. But she wouldn't steal from you. She would, I said flatly. And she did. He started to say something, then hesitated. She left early this morning, he said finally. Said she was running errands. She didn't tell me where. That was all I needed to hear. For the rest of the day, I couldn't sit still. Every sound outside made me jump. Every car that passed made me run to the window. I even drove through nearby neighborhoods, scanning driveways and side streets, hoping to spot the trailer somewhere. But it was like it had vanished into thin air. That night, I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I sat on my couch staring at my phone, scrolling through pictures of the trailer, feeling hollow. I thought about Owen, about how he'd told me to be careful, to trust my instincts. He'd always said Miranda had a selfish streak that could get her into trouble. I'd ignored it, thinking she was just difficult, not dangerous. My phone buzzed late that evening. A text from Miranda. No message, just a picture. It was dark and blurry, but I recognized it instantly. The interior of my trailer. My quilt folded neatly on the bench, the little lantern I kept near the window glowing softly. She'd taken it. And she wanted me to know. I felt a surge of fury so intense it burned through my fear. I saved the photo, forwarded it to the officer's email, and then sat there, shaking. I wasn't going to wait weeks for the police. I wasn't going to let her win. If Miranda thought she could take the last piece of Owen I had left, she was about to find out just how wrong she was. I wasn't going to wait for them. I decided to find my trailer myself. If Miranda thought I'd just sit around crying, she didn't know me at all. By the next morning, I was done feeling helpless. I woke up before dawn, packed a thermos of coffee, grabbed my camera, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open. If the police needed proof, I was going to find it myself. I started by checking local online listings, marketplaces, community boards, anything where someone might try to sell or trade a trailer. At first, it felt hopeless. Hundreds of listings popped up, but I knew every dent, every scrape, every patch of rust on mine. So when I saw a post titled "Used Camper Trailer, Great Condition, Serious Buyers Only," with no description and a single photo that looked oddly familiar, my pulse spiked. I zoomed in. The paint chip near the right rear wheel. The faint scratch along the side window. It was mine. There was no mistaking it. The listing had been posted just a few hours earlier under the name Ruth M. and a phone number with a local area code. I copied it immediately. The location was tagged near the old part of town, close to a cluster of rural properties, one of which belonged to Miranda's cousin. I sat there, staring at the map. My instincts screamed at me that this was it. Miranda had hidden the trailer there. She must have thought no one would look. After forwarding the link and screenshots to the officer who handled my case, I grabbed my car keys and drove out myself. It was reckless, I know that now. But I couldn't stand waiting. The drive was about 30 minutes, and with every mile, my anger grew steadier, sharper. The road turned from pavement to dirt, lined with tall trees that formed dark tunnels of shade. My headlights caught glimpses of fences, barns, and abandoned sheds. Finally, I reached the property. The listing coordinates pointed to a sagging wooden gate with a mailbox that read, Waters, Miranda's cousin's last name. I parked a short distance away, pulling my car behind a line of trees. My hands trembled as I raised my binoculars. There it was, my trailer. Parked beside a weathered red barn, half hidden under a tarp that didn't quite fit. The sight of it nearly made me cry. I snapped photos from every angle, careful not to make noise. Then I noticed something that sent a chill through me. The trailer door was open, just a crack, swinging slightly in the breeze. Someone had been inside. A figure appeared a moment later, Miranda. She walked out of the barn wearing jeans and a light jacket, her phone pressed to her ear. She wasn't nervous or sneaky. She looked calm, in control. I zoomed in through the binoculars, watching her move toward the trailer. She glanced around once before climbing the steps and disappearing inside. I didn't breathe for a full minute. The trailer door shut behind her, and all I could do was watch, my heart hammering. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Finally, she came back out, only this time, she wasn't empty-handed. In her grasp was a small, tan envelope. Even from a distance, I knew exactly what it was. Owen's letter. The one hidden in the glove box. The one she had no right to touch. I lowered the binoculars slowly, my hands slick with sweat. The world felt like it tilted around me. What was she doing with it? How had she even found it? I wanted to run up there and rip it from her hands, but I forced myself to stay hidden. I couldn't risk scaring her off before I had enough evidence. She stood there for a moment, staring down at the envelope as if unsure whether to open it. Then, without hesitation, she tore it open. I could see her hands trembling slightly as she unfolded the paper inside. She started reading, her expression shifting from curiosity to something else, something darker. Shock. Whatever was written in that letter, it wasn't what she expected. Miranda's body language changed instantly. She looked around, as if suddenly aware she might be watched. Then she stuffed the letter into her jacket, pocket, and stormed back toward the barn, slamming the door behind her. I sat there for several minutes, trying to steady my breathing. My mind was racing. What could possibly be in that letter that would shake her like that? It wasn't just about money or inheritance, it was something personal. Something that scared her. I picked up my phone and called the officer again. "I found it," I said, my voice low but steady. "I have photos. She's there right now." He sounded surprised but told me to stay put and not confront her. "We'll need to get a warrant first, ma'am. Don't approach her property, we'll handle it." But every instinct I had screamed that if I waited, she'd destroy whatever was in that envelope and possibly the trailer too. Still, I forced myself to listen. I sent the officer my photos and GPS location, then I waited. The afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the fields. My thermos of coffee sat cold beside me, untouched. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the barn. I half expected Miranda to come back out. But she didn't. Not for hours. As twilight settled, I finally saw movement again. The barn door opened, and Miranda emerged, moving quickly toward her car. She clutched something close to her chest and looked shaken, like someone who'd just seen a ghost. I raised the binoculars one last time and caught a glimpse of her face, pale, tight, almost frightened. Whatever was in that letter had rattled her to the core. She climbed into her car and sped away down the dirt road, leaving a trail of dust in her wake. I waited until the sound of her engine faded before stepping out of my car. I didn't go closer, but I stood at the tree line, staring at my trailer, my pulse still racing. Whatever Owen had written to me was powerful enough to scare Miranda. That much was clear. And now, I had to find out why. But then I saw Miranda walk out of the trailer holding something that made my heart stop. In her hands was the one thing I prayed she'd never find: the envelope from Owen. The memory of that envelope had haunted me since the day Owen handed it to me. We were sitting inside the trailer, parked beside a lake near the Smoky Mountains. The air smelled like pine and rain. Owen's health had already started to fade, though neither of us wanted to admit it. He'd reached into his duffel bag, pulled out that small tan envelope, and held it out with a seriousness that scared me. "Keep this somewhere safe," he said. "In the glove box is fine. Don't open it unless you really need to." "Need to for what?" I'd asked. He just smiled, that same sad, quiet smile that always meant he was hiding something. "You'll know when the time comes." I thought it was something sentimental, a final love letter, maybe a note about our shared savings or insurance. I never opened it, not even after his funeral. I couldn't. Part of me was afraid it would make him feel too close again, and part of me was afraid it would make him feel too far away. Now, standing by the side of that dirt road, watching Miranda drive off with the letter that wasn't hers, I felt sick. That envelope was the one piece of him I hadn't even shared with family. And she'd just torn it open like it was a package from a store. I sat there in my car for a long time, trying to decide what to do. The police still hadn't arrived, and the sky was bleeding orange with sunset. I wanted to chase her down, demand to know what she read, but I forced myself to wait. If I lost control now, I could ruin my chance at getting the truth legally. Instead, I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mind kept replaying the look on her face when she read the letter: shock first, then fear. She'd gone pale, like she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to. When I got home, I couldn't sit still. I paced the living room, glancing at my phone, every few minutes, waiting for a call from the officer. None came. By midnight, I was exhausted but wired. I sat on my couch, staring at the faint reflection of my face in the dark window. All I could think was, what did she find? The next morning, I called Miranda. She didn't answer. I tried Todd next. He sounded groggy, confused. She left early again, he said. Did something happen? I hesitated. You should ask her that. Then I hung up. Something inside me snapped that day. Fear turned to resolve. I'd spent too long letting Miranda intimidate me, control the narrative, and twist Owen's memory into something ugly. Not anymore. I drove to her house, the one she and Todd had rented near town. Her car was in the driveway, parked at an angle like she'd come home in a rush. The curtains were drawn tight. I walked up the path, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. When I knocked, there was no answer. But I knew she was inside. I could see a faint shadow move past the blinds. Miranda! I called out, keeping my voice steady. We need to talk. Now. For a long moment. Silence. Then the sound of the lock clicking. The door opened just a few inches, and Miranda's face appeared. She looked terrible pale, with dark circles under her eyes. Her hair was unbrushed, and her hands shook slightly as she gripped the doorframe. What do you want, Hailey? She said, her voice low, wary. I want my trailer back, I said. And the letter you took from the glove box. She blinked rapidly, her lips twitching. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, I said sharply. I saw you. I have photos. I called the police. They'll have a warrant by tomorrow. That made her flinch. For a second, her eyes darted to something behind her, and I caught a glimpse of the tan envelope sitting on the kitchen counter. My heart lurched. I took a step forward, but she blocked the door. Understand, she whispered. You weren't supposed to see that. See what? I demanded. Her expression shifted, fear mixed with guilt. He lied to you, she said. Owen lied. The words hit me like a slap. What are you talking about? But before she could answer, Todd's car pulled into the driveway. She turned, panicked. You have to go, she said, her voice breaking. Please, Hailey. Just go. I stood there for a second, torn between fury and confusion. Then I forced myself to step back. This isn't over, I said. She shut the door without replying. Driving home, my thoughts spiraled. Owen lied? About what? About the letter? About her? Nothing made sense anymore. If Miranda was telling the truth, then everything I thought I knew about my marriage might have been built on something false. That night, I couldn't stop staring at the empty space where the trailer once sat. The place looked wrong without it, hollow. But what haunted me most wasn't its absence, it was the question Miranda had left hanging in the air. What had she read that made her so afraid? Whatever Miranda read in that letter, it wasn't just about money. When I walked into Miranda's kitchen, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. I didn't sleep that night. My mind wouldn't stop racing Owen's letter, Miranda's cryptic words, the fact that she still had my trailer and was hiding something inside it. By morning, exhaustion had turned into anger. I decided I wasn't waiting for the police anymore. Whatever was happening between us had gone too far. I needed the truth, and I needed it now. I drove to her house without calling first. The sky was gray, the kind of heavy morning that promised rain. Todd's car wasn't there this time. That was good, I didn't want him stepping in to play mediator. This was between me and her. When Miranda opened the door, her expression went from surprise to panic in a split second. Her eyes darted to the counter where the tan envelope still sat. She hadn't even tried to hide it. Can I come in? I asked. My tone wasn't a question. She hesitated, chewing her lip, but finally stepped aside. The air inside the house was thick, tense. It smelled faintly of coffee and cigarette smoke, neither of which suited her. The blinds were drawn again, muting the light. I didn't bother with pleasantries. You took my trailer. You broke into it. You read a letter that wasn't yours. Miranda folded her arms but didn't look at me. You wouldn't understand. Then make me understand, I snapped. Because right now, all I see is theft and lies. What was in that letter that has you so terrified? Her jaw clenched. You shouldn't have kept it from me, she said quietly. If you'd just told me what Owen left behind, none of this would have happened. I stared at her. What Owen left behind? It was addressed to me, Miranda. Me. You had no right to open it. She looked up sharply, tears brimming in her eyes. He wasn't who you think he was. Something cold gripped my spine. What are you talking about? Miranda's voice shook. That letter, it's not about money, or a gift, or any of that. It's a confession. He was protecting you, yes, but he was also protecting himself, and me. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. From what? She hesitated, her eyes darting toward the counter again. I walked over and picked up the envelope before she could stop me. My fingers brushed the seal torn open, creased, handled roughly. Inside, I could see the folded sheets of Owen's familiar handwriting. Miranda reached out, desperate. Hailey, please, don't read it, not yet. But I was done listening to her. I slipped the pages out and scanned the first few lines. Owen's handwriting was shaky, his words uneven, written near the end of his life. My throat tightened as I read the opening line. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you've found what I didn't have the courage to say out loud. Miranda's voice wavered behind me. He didn't mean to hurt you. The next paragraph mentioned a bank account, a savings fund I already knew about, but then, the words took a turn. Years ago, before you and I met, your sister-in-law came to me for help. She'd made a mistake, one that could have ruined her life. I covered for her, paid off what she owed, and kept her secret. I couldn't tell you because it wasn't mine to tell. But I've carried that guilt for years, wondering when the truth would surface. My vision blurred for a moment. Miranda stood frozen, her lips trembling. Owen helped you? I said quietly. Helped you with what? She sank into a chair, hiding her face in her hands. I was stupid, she whispered. I was working for a small company years ago, handling payroll. I thought I could borrow some money just until payday. But things got out of hand. Owen found out before anyone else did. He paid it back for me. Covered my tracks. Said he didn't want Todd to know. I stared at her, trying to process it. So that's why you wanted the letter. You didn't want anyone to find out. She nodded miserably. It would destroy Todd. He thinks I'm this perfect person. That I've never lied to him. If he knew what I did, what Owen did for me, he'd leave. I wanted to feel pity. But all I could summon was fury. You stole from me, I said through clenched teeth. You violated my husband's memory to protect a lie, and you think that excuses what you did? Tears rolled down her cheeks. I panicked, Hailey. When I saw that letter, I thought maybe Owen told you. I thought you'd use it against me. I just wanted it gone. Gone? I snapped. That letter was the last thing he ever left me. The only piece of him I still had. You didn't just take a trailer, you took him from me again. The room went silent except for our breathing. For the first time, Miranda looked small, fragile, even. The woman who'd always strutted through life like she owned the air around her now sat trembling, her facade cracked wide open. I folded the letter carefully, sliding it back into the torn envelope. I'm taking this, I said firmly. And the trailer. The police already have your name. You can either make this right, or they'll do it for you. As I turned to leave, Miranda's voice came out in a hoarse whisper. He lied to you, Hailey. I stopped in the doorway. What do you mean? She hesitated, eyes red and glassy. That letter, it's not the whole story. There's more he didn't tell you. He made mistakes too. I turned back slowly. What mistakes? She shook her head. You'll see. It's all there if you read it to the end. I didn't respond. I just walked out, clutching the envelope like it was the only solid thing left in my world. Driving home, the rain finally started to fall, soft and relentless. I parked in the driveway and sat there, staring at the letter in my lap. For the first time, I let myself feel the weight of it, not just the paper, but everything it represented. The truth, the lies, The years I thought I knew my husband. My hands shook as I opened it fully. Owen's voice seemed to whisper through the ink as I began to read, line by line, the words that would unravel everything I believed about our marriage. The truth inside that letter shattered everything I thought I knew about Owen. Owen's handwriting was shaky, but the words were clear enough to break me. I sat at my kitchen table, the sound of rain drumming against the windows, the letter spread out in front of me. My heart pounded so loud it almost drowned out the storm outside. It had been 2 years since I'd heard Owen's voice. Yet, as I began reading, it felt like he was sitting right there across from me, trying to explain something I didn't want to hear. Hailey, if you're reading this, I need you to understand that I never meant to hurt you. There are things I did before we met, decisions I made, that carried consequences longer than I expected. Some of those choices involve Miranda. My stomach twisted as I read her name. Even on paper, it sent a chill through me. She came to me when she was in trouble. I helped her, yes, but what I didn't tell you is that I became part of the problem. I borrowed money from a joint fund I shouldn't have touched to bail her out. It wasn't a huge amount, but it wasn't mine to take. I replaced it before anyone noticed, but the guilt ate at me for years. I couldn't tell you without risking everything we'd built. I leaned back in my chair, stunned. He'd taken money from our shared account, money I'd trusted him to handle just to cover up his sister's mistake. It wasn't betrayal in the romantic sense, but it still felt like a crack in the foundation of everything I thought we'd shared. The next paragraph felt even heavier. I didn't want Miranda's secret to destroy your family or your faith in me. She was scared and reckless, and I thought I could fix it. But fixing it meant lying to you. If she ever finds this letter, she'll hate me for it. But if you're reading it, that means she's done something to make you see who she really is. Don't let her manipulate you again. I stopped reading and rubbed my temples, trying to process it all. Miranda had stolen the letter, thinking it held something about money or inheritance, but instead, it exposed her worst secret and Owen's guilt for covering it. No wonder she'd looked so shaken. I turned the page over. There was more. You'll find a safety deposit box listed under my name at the First National Bank in Cedar Hollow. Inside, there are copies of documents tied to that old account, along with something I couldn't bring myself to give you while I was alive, a folder marked Blue Ridge. It explains everything. I set up an account under your name with the remaining funds. You deserve something secure, untouched by my mistakes. My breath caught. A safety deposit box? I had no idea it existed. I'd thought I'd handled every piece of paperwork after his death, but this wasn't listed anywhere in the will. The final paragraph was short, but it hit harder than all the rest. You always saw the good in me, even when I didn't. I kept too many secrets, not out of mistrust, but because I wanted to protect you from the mess I'd made before you came into my life. I know that's not an excuse. If this letter reaches you, promise me one thing. Don't let Miranda's darkness pull you down with her. Do what's right, even if it hurts. I believe in you. The words blurred through my tears. I folded the letter carefully, my hands trembling. Anger and sadness churned together until I didn't know which I felt more. He'd hidden things from me, serious things, but part of me still understood why. Owen had always carried everyone's burdens, even when it crushed him. But Miranda's reaction haunted me more than the letter itself. She'd read those words and panicked. Why? If it was just about the embezzlement, she could have denied it. But her fear had been deeper, like she knew something else the letter hinted at but didn't say. That's when I remembered the phrase Owen had written, "It explains everything." The Blue Ridge folder. I needed to see it. The rain outside grew heavier as I stood up. The letter clutched in my hand. My reflection in the window looked unfamiliar, older, harder. I wasn't the grieving widow anymore. I was someone chasing the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The next morning, I drove to the bank. The clerk recognized Owen's name immediately and retrieved the small metal box from storage. My signature and ID matched the documentation Owen had set up before he passed. Inside was a stack of papers and a blue folder just as he described. I carried the box home before opening it, my heart hammering. Inside the folder were records, bank transfers, repayment notes, and one document that made me freeze. It was dated over 15 years ago. A police report. The report detailed an incident involving missing funds from a small marketing firm, Miranda's old employer. The amount matched exactly what Owen mentioned. And scribbled at the bottom in the officer's handwriting were 3 chilling words. Case dismissed, paid in full. Owen had paid it off quietly, covering her crime. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the report, piecing it all together. Miranda had risked prison once before, and Owen had saved her. She'd spent years pretending it never happened, maybe even convincing herself it didn't. And now, after reading that letter, she knew the truth might finally come out. Owen's lie wasn't the only one at stake. Hers was too. I folded the documents neatly and locked them back inside the box. My heart felt heavy but steady. Owen hadn't betrayed me out of malice, he'd protected both of us. But Miranda? She'd betrayed us both out of fear. And if she thought I'd let her bury the truth again, she was about to learn I'd inherited more of Owen's determination than she ever imagined. But first, I needed Miranda to know I wasn't afraid of her anymore. If Owen hinted at a secret, I was going to uncover every piece of it. After reading Owen's letter and seeing the police report, something inside me changed. I wasn't just a grieving widow anymore, I was a woman on a mission. I wanted answers. I wanted the full story that Miranda had buried so deeply, she thought no one would ever find it. I wanted to understand exactly what Owen had sacrificed for her, and why she was still so desperate to keep it hidden, even years later. That morning, I spread everything across my dining table: the letter, copies of the police report, Owen's banknotes. The documents painted a picture, but it wasn't complete. There were gaps, too many unanswered questions. Why had the case against Miranda been dropped so suddenly? Who helped her cover it up besides Owen? And most importantly, why did Owen feel the need to warn me about her even after his death? I decided to start where it all began, with Miranda's old job. I remembered Owen once mentioning she worked for a small marketing firm called Hendricks & Co. years before I met him. I Googled the company, and though it had gone out of business nearly a decade ago, I managed to find archived news articles about it. Most of them were boring announcements, client promotions, employee spotlights. But buried deep in a local paper from 15 years ago, I found a small column: Local business investigated for embezzlement, employee under review. The article didn't name names, but the timeline fit perfectly. Funds had gone missing, and a junior employee had been quietly let go after internal restitution. The company declined to pursue charges. I knew it was her. I dug deeper. I searched through public records, state archives, anything I could access without special permission. I even found old LinkedIn remnants and professional directories that listed Miranda as a finance assistant at the firm until 2010, right around the time the report had been filed. Every clue lined up like pieces of a puzzle Owen had left for me to finish. By afternoon, I had enough evidence to confirm the story. Miranda had stolen money from her company. Owen had paid it back to keep her out of jail. And after all that, she'd built her life on a lie, pretending to be the perfect wife, the moral sister, the one who helped everyone else. But there was still one thing I couldn't shake: the part of the letter where Owen wrote, "If she ever finds this letter, she'll do anything to cover her past." He'd known her better than anyone, and he was right. She already had. The realization filled me with both grief and fury. Grief for Owen, who carried her secret until his dying breath. Fury for myself, for letting her manipulate me after everything she'd already done. I took a break, stepped outside, and breathed in the cold autumn air. The sky was gray, the wind sharp, but I felt clearer than I had in weeks. I wasn't going to let Miranda rewrite Owen's story or mine. I was going to confront her again, but this time, I'd come armed with truth. That night, I scanned and organized everything: each document, letter, and clipping neatly filed in a digital folder on my computer. I even printed a copy of the police report and highlighted the section showing "case dismissed due to external payment." I wasn't naive. Miranda wouldn't crumble just because I knew the truth. She'd deny, manipulate, twist every word. She'd turn herself into the victim, like she always did. So I needed something she couldn't talk her way out of, something undeniable. That's when the idea hit me. I'd record her. If I could get her to admit what she'd done to Owen, to me, to her company, I'd finally have the leverage I needed. Not for revenge, but for closure. For justice. The next morning, I drove to a nearby electronics store and bought a discreet voice recorder. The kind you could slip into a pocket or place on a table unnoticed. My hands didn't shake this time. I wasn't scared anymore. When I got home, I rehearsed what I'd say. I'd make it sound like I wanted to forgive her, that I understood her side. Let her think she'd won my sympathy again. People like Miranda always talked too much when they thought they had the upper hand. For the rest of the day, I went through Owen's letter again and again. Each time, I noticed something new. The way he mentioned, "Don't let her manipulate you again," the way he seemed almost resigned. He must have known she'd try to take advantage of me one day, just like she did of him. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about money or deceit. It was about control. Miranda didn't steal my trailer for greed, she did it to assert power. To prove she still had the ability to take from me, even after Owen was gone. But she was about to learn that her control over me ended the moment I stopped being afraid of her. By the time night fell, I had everything ready: copies of documents, a working recorder, and a plan. I typed a short message to her. "Miranda, I think we should talk. You were right, I didn't understand. Maybe it's time I hear your side. Coffee tomorrow?" I stared at the message before hitting send. "Within minutes," she replied. "Finally. You're doing the right thing. 10 a.m. at my place?" I smiled faintly. Predictable as ever. I put the recorder in my purse and laid out the documents in a neat folder. I didn't know exactly how the conversation would go, but I knew one thing for sure. This time, I'd be the one in control. If Miranda wanted to steal from me, she was about to lose much more than she ever expected. I decided to play Miranda's game, but on my terms this time. I didn't sleep the night before meeting her. Not because I was afraid anymore, but because my mind wouldn't stop rehearsing every possible outcome. I wasn't walking into another argument, I was walking into a performance. Miranda thrived on control, manipulation, and sympathy. If I wanted her to admit the truth, I had to make her believe she still had power over me. The next morning, I put on a calm face and a neutral smile, the kind you wear when you're about to lie convincingly. I tucked the voice recorder inside my purse, double-checked that it was on, and headed out the door. Miranda's house looked smaller in daylight. The once pristine yard now had overgrown grass and a mailbox hanging crooked. Maybe it was symbolic her perfect facade was starting to crumble. I took a deep breath and knocked. When she opened the door, she was wearing makeup again, her hair brushed, her demeanor polished. Her mask was back in place. "Hailey," she said smoothly. "I'm glad you came. I knew you'd come around once you'd calm down." I forced a small, forgiving smile. I think we both said things we didn't mean. That was all it took. Her posture relaxed. She stepped aside to let me in. The kitchen smelled of coffee and lemon cleaner. I set my purse on the table, right between us, making sure the recorder was facing her. "I brought some things Owen left behind," I said gently, taking out the folder but leaving it closed. "I think we should talk about them." Her eyes flickered to it, but she didn't touch it. "Hailey, I don't want to fight anymore. The past is behind us." I tilted my head. "Is it?" She looked uneasy. I leaned forward slightly, softening my voice. "Miranda, I'm not here to accuse you. I just want to understand." I read the letter. "I know what Owen did for you. I get it now why you panicked." Her jaw tightened, but curiosity got the better of her. "You do?" "Yes," I said. "You were scared. You didn't want Todd to find out. You thought that letter would ruin you." She nodded slowly, eyes filling with false remorse. "Exactly. You have to understand, Hailey. I made one mistake years ago. I was desperate. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." I leaned back, pretending to empathize. "I believe you. But Owen didn't deserve to carry that secret for you. It wasn't fair to him." Her eyes flashed defensively. "He offered to help me. I didn't ask him to." That was the first crack. Her tone sharpened, her guilt slipping through. I kept my voice calm. "I know. He was trying to protect you. That's who he was." But you've had years to make it right, Miranda. Why didn't you? She exhaled shakily, avoiding my gaze. I thought if no one knew, it couldn't hurt anyone. I never thought he'd tell you about it. So, when you saw the letter, you panicked. Her eyes shot up. Of course I did. You would have told Todd. You would have destroyed my life. I let silence stretch between us. Then, slowly, I opened the folder and slid the newspaper clipping across the table, the one about her old company's embezzlement case. Her face drained of color. Where did you get that? She whispered. Owen kept everything, I said quietly. And now? So do I. For a moment, she didn't speak. Her hand trembled as she lifted the clipping. You don't understand. It wasn't just money. It was... She trailed off, realizing she'd said too much. I seized the opportunity. It was what, Miranda? Her lips parted, but she stayed silent. I leaned forward again. You can tell me. I'm not here to ruin you. I just need the truth. Her eyes darted to the recorder inside my purse, though she didn't know it was recording. She hesitated, then whispered. It wasn't just money. There were files, client data. I sold some of it. I didn't mean for it to go as far as it did, but I needed money fast. Someone found out. I thought I was going to be arrested. My stomach turned. And Owen fixed that too? She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. He paid them off. Told them I didn't know what I was doing. He saved me. I owed him everything. I clenched my hands under the table, forcing myself to stay calm while the recorder captured every word. Then why did you turn on me? I asked quietly. Why steal from me? Why destroy what he left? Her voice cracked. Because when I saw that letter, I realized he might have told you everything. I couldn't let Todd find out. I thought if I destroyed it, it'd all go away. It never goes away, I said softly. Secrets don't die, they just wait to be found. She broke down then, covering her face with her hands, sobbing, quietly. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the nights I spent terrified and grieving. The stolen trailer, the broken lock, the photo she'd sent me to taunt me. She didn't deserve my pity. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red, her voice small. What are you going to do now? I took the recorder from my purse and set it on the table. The small red light blinked steadily. Her expression froze. I met her gaze evenly. I needed to protect myself. Just like Owen tried to protect both of us. She went pale. Hailey, please. Don't tell Todd. Don't give that to the police. I'll do anything. I stood up slowly, slipping the recorder back into my bag. You already did enough, Miranda. Now it's time for the truth to do something too. Her voice trembled. What are you going to do? I gave her one last look, steady and cold. I'm going to finish what Owen started. Then I turned and walked out, leaving her sitting there, shaking, with her lies finally laid bare. That's when she confessed and I caught every word on tape. Miranda's voice trembled as she admitted everything I suspected and more. I didn't even make it halfway down her driveway before my phone started buzzing. It was Miranda. I let it ring twice before answering, keeping my voice level. Hailey, she said, her voice cracking, please don't go to the police. You don't understand what you'll do to my life if this gets out. I think I understand perfectly, I said coldly. You've been lying for over 15 years, Miranda. Owen covered for you. I forgave your rudeness, your cruelty, your entitlement, but stealing from me? Breaking into my trailer? That's where it ends. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing unevenly. I'll tell you everything, she said finally, her tone broken. Just come back. Let me explain before you do something you can't undo. I hesitated. A part of me wanted to hang up, to let the recording do the talking when the time came. But the other part, the part that had spent months drowning in questions, needed closure. Fine, I said. I'll give you 5 minutes. No lies this time. When I walked back into her house, Miranda looked like she'd aged 10 years in an hour. Her makeup was smudged, and her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She gestured for me to sit, but I stayed standing. Talk, I said. She swallowed hard. You already know about the money I took from my old job, but there's more to it. I didn't just take company funds, I also sold client data. Personal information. I thought I could make quick cash and pay off my debts before anyone noticed. But someone did notice. One of the client's lawyers threatened to press charges. Her voice broke. That's when Owen stepped in. He paid the lawyer off, handled the paperwork, everything. He told me to disappear from that company quietly and start over. He said it would never happen again. I kept my arms crossed. And it didn't, until now. She nodded miserably. It didn't. I stayed clean. But after Owen died, things got bad for me and Todd. We were drowning in debt again. I remembered that letter. Owen told me once that he'd left you something important. I thought it was money. So you decided to steal it. Tears spilled down her face. I was desperate. Todd doesn't know how bad things are. I thought if I could just find that letter, maybe there'd be a clue to an account or something I could use. But when I opened it, and I saw what was inside. She trailed off, wiping her face. It wasn't what I expected. It was him telling the truth. About me. About everything. I realized if you ever read it, you'd hate me and Todd would too. So you panicked, I said. She nodded. Yes, I wanted to destroy it. I drove the trailer out to my cousin's barn and hid it. I thought I'd have time to burn the letter before you noticed. But then you showed up. I felt a hollow kind of calm wash over me. You do realize Owen warned me about you, right? Even in that letter, he said you'd do anything to keep your secret. Miranda gave a bitter laugh. He always saw through me. And I hated him for it. That stopped me cold. You hated him? Her expression twisted with guilt. Not at first. But after he helped me, he made me feel small. Like I owed him my life. Every time he looked at me, I saw disappointment. I told myself he was judging me, but really, I was judging myself. I shook my head slowly. So, your solution was to hurt the one person he loved most after he was gone? Her voice broke again. I wasn't thinking straight, Hailey. I just wanted to erase the past. But when I read that letter, I realized there's no erasing it. He knew what kind of person I was. He knew I'd never change. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt heavy, suffocating. She finally whispered, "Are you going to the police?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman who had tormented me for years was nothing but a shell now. Guilt had hollowed her out long before I ever confronted her. I already did, I said quietly. But whether or not they press charges depends on what you do next. Her eyes widened. What do you mean? You can tell them the truth yourself. Or you can wait until they find out from me. I have your confession. Every word. She covered her mouth, realizing what I meant. You recorded me? Yes, I said evenly. Just like you planned every cruel thing you did to me, I planned this. Miranda started to sob again. Please, Hailey, I can't lose Todd. I can't go to prison. I sighed. You should have thought about that before you took what wasn't yours. Owen spent his final years cleaning up your mess. I'm not doing the same. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. You're just like him, you know. I froze in the doorway. What? Her tone was strangely soft. Owen, always thinking you can fix people with truth. But sometimes the truth just ruins everything. I looked back at her, standing in her kitchen surrounded by the wreckage of her lies, and felt something unexpected pity. Not because she deserved it, but because she finally saw herself clearly for the first time. I didn't say another word. I walked out and closed the door behind me. The morning light was harsh, cutting across the street as I stood there breathing in the cold air. My heart felt lighter, not happy, not relieved, just free. When I got home, I emailed the recording and all the evidence to the police officer handling my case. I didn't know what they'd do with it, but I knew I'd done what Owen asked, the right thing, even if it hurt. Later that afternoon, I sat by the window, watching the rain dry from the glass, when I heard a car pull into my driveway. I opened the door expecting a delivery truck, but it wasn't. It was a police cruiser. The officer stepped out, holding a clipboard. "Mrs. Clark? We've located your trailer," he said. "And there's something you should see." But the next day, someone else knocked on my door with news I didn't expect. The officer's tone was calm, but his words made my stomach drop. When the officer said they'd found my trailer, relief hit me like a wave. For a brief moment, I thought maybe this nightmare was finally over, that I'd get my trailer back, get the closure I needed, and put Miranda's chaos behind me. But as he kept talking, I realized nothing about this was going to be simple. "We recovered your trailer early this morning," he said, flipping through his clipboard. "It was parked near an abandoned property just outside of town, not far from where you mentioned her cousin lives." That confirmed what I already knew, but hearing it from him still made my chest tighten. "Was it damaged?" I asked. "Some minor damage," he said. "Broken lock, cracked side window, and looks like someone went through it. We're holding it for now, pending inspection, but you'll get it back soon." I nodded, clutching my jacket tightly around me. "And Miranda?" He glanced up, his expression neutral but measured. "We questioned her this morning. She came in voluntarily." My pulse jumped. "She confessed?" He gave a short nod. "Yes. She admitted to taking the trailer and opening the letter. She also mentioned the past financial matter you brought up. We're still sorting through the details, but it aligns with what you shared in your recording." I exhaled shakily. "So what happens now?" "She'll likely face a misdemeanor charge for theft and trespassing," he said. "As for the old embezzlement case, the statute of limitations may have expired, but her confession will still be documented. It could affect her future employment or any legal disputes." I didn't know whether to feel satisfied or hollow. Justice was finally on paper, but it didn't bring Owen back or undo the damage she'd caused. Still, it was something. The officer closed his notebook. "You did the right thing, Mrs. Clark. Not everyone would have handled this the way you did." I gave a faint smile. It didn't feel right. It just felt necessary. He nodded once, tipped his hat, and left. When I closed the door, I leaned against it for a long moment, breathing slowly. The house was quiet, too quiet. For the first time in months, I didn't have to look over my shoulder or wonder what Miranda was planning next. But the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt heavy. A few days later, the police called to tell me I could collect my trailer. I drove out to the impound lot, my stomach fluttering as the attendant led me through rows of vehicles until I saw it, my old trailer. Dusty, dented, but still standing. It looked smaller than I remembered, but maybe that was because I wasn't the same woman who last stood in front of it. When I stepped inside, the air hit me like a memory, faint hints of pine, metal, and old paper. The small lantern was still on the counter, the blanket folded neatly on the bench, just like in the photo Miranda had sent me weeks earlier. But there was something else, something tucked under that blanket. A photograph. It was crumpled, the edges torn, but I recognized it immediately. Owen and Miranda, standing side by side outside a cabin. His arm was around her shoulder, and both of them were smiling, though Owen's smile looked strained. I flipped it over, and my breath caught. Written in Owen's handwriting were the words, "She needed help, I did what I had to." For a long time, I just stared at it, unsure how to feel. The image didn't suggest romance, it suggested responsibility. A brother trying to protect a sister who kept making bad choices. Still, something about it hurt. It reminded me that Owen had carried burdens I never even knew existed. I tucked the photo into the folder with his letter and the police paperwork. That trailer had once been a vessel of adventure and love. Now it was a container of secrets, regrets, and unfinished goodbyes. Driving home, I passed Miranda's house. The police tape was gone, but her car wasn't in the driveway. Later, I heard from a neighbor that she'd left town with Todd, saying she needed a break. I wondered if Todd knew the full story, if he understood just how far she'd gone. Part of me hoped he didn't. The man didn't deserve to carry her guilt too. Over the next few weeks, I started to rebuild. I worked on small repairs for the trailer, fixing the window, polishing the fixtures, repainting the chipped exterior. It became therapeutic, almost like restoring not just the trailer but myself. Every dent I smoothed over felt like reclaiming a part of my peace. One afternoon, while cleaning the cabinet above the small kitchenette, I found something wedged deep in the corner, a folded piece of paper I didn't recognize. When I opened it, I realized it was a copy of the trailer's original registration form. But written on the back, in Owen's handwriting, was a simple note. "This is where we found peace, Hailey. Don't let anyone take it away from you." I sank down onto the small bench, clutching that note against my chest. After everything, Miranda's betrayal, Owen's confession, the lies, and the fear, those words were exactly what I needed. I didn't cry this time. Instead, I felt something gentler. Gratitude. Because even in death, Owen had left me with one final truth. Peace isn't found in keeping secrets, it's found in surviving them. That night, I parked the trailer in the same place it had always been, right at the edge of my property, facing the open fields. The stars were out, clear and quiet. I stood there, hand resting on the door handle, and whispered softly, "We're home again." But I still had one last thing to do before I could move on. I drove out to the lake where Owen and I used to camp, the trailer behind me, like old times. It had been weeks since the police closed the case. Miranda was gone, my trailer was back where it belonged, and for the first time in what felt like forever, my days were quiet again. But peace doesn't come instantly, it arrives in fragments, like sunlight breaking through clouds. And though I'd gotten justice, I knew there was still one thing left undone. Owen's letter had ended with a request, unspoken but clear. He wanted me to find closure, to let go of the pain, the guilt, and the anger that had tethered me to his family's chaos. I couldn't do that, staring at the same four walls. I needed to go back to the place where everything started. So, on a crisp Saturday morning, I packed a bag, hitched the trailer to my truck, and set off for Blue Ridge Lake, the spot where Owen and I had spent our happiest days. The drive was long and winding, but familiar. The trees were shedding their last autumn leaves, and the air smelled like pine and wet earth. For the first time in months, I felt calm. When I reached the lake, I parked the trailer by the water and just stood there for a while, listening to the waves lap gently against the shore. The sound carried memories, our laughter echoing over campfires. Owen's guitar playing off-key songs, his hand warm around mine as we watched the sunrise together. Those moments had felt so simple then. I hadn't realized they'd be the ones I'd miss for the rest of my life. Inside the trailer, everything felt the same but different. The quilt Owen's mother had made still covered the bench. His favorite coffee mug sat on the counter, the one he always insisted tasted better than any other. I made a cup of coffee, sat down at the small table, and unfolded his letter again. This time, I read it slowly, not with anger or confusion, but with understanding. Every word made sense now. He wasn't trying to protect Miranda more than me, he was trying to protect both of us from her. He'd carried her mistakes so I wouldn't have to live in the shadow of them. That was the kind of man he was. For the first time, I didn't feel betrayed. I felt loved. I whispered softly, "I forgive you, Owen. For the lies. For the silence. For everything. You were just trying to do what you thought was right." Tears came, but they were quiet ones, the kind that didn't sting, only softened. As the sun set over the lake, I took the envelope, the police report, and the photograph of Owen and Miranda, and placed them all in a small metal tin. I dug a hole near the edge of the water and buried it there. It wasn't about hiding the past, it was about letting it rest. When the last bit of dirt covered the tin, I stood up and looked out across the lake. The water shimmered orange and gold, and for a moment, I swore I felt Owen beside me. The wind brushed past like a familiar hand, warm and fleeting. That night, I slept in the trailer with the windows open, the sound of the lake lulling me into dreams. I dreamt of Owen smiling, of laughter and peace and mornings without fear. When I woke up, the world felt lighter. Before leaving, I pulled out a small container of Owen's ashes, the part I'd kept all this time. I walked down to the dock, the wood creaking beneath my feet, and gently released them into the water. The ashes swirled for a moment before disappearing into the waves. "Goodbye, love," I whispered. "We're both free now." On the drive home, I didn't take the fastest route. I stopped along the way to take pictures of the hills, the winding roads, and the patches of fog that clung to the trees. It felt like retracing the life we'd shared one photo at a time. When I got home, I cleaned the trailer from top to bottom. Not because it was dirty, but because I wanted it to feel new again. The broken window was repaired, the paint refreshed, and the interior smelled faintly of cedar and lemon. I hung a framed copy of Owen's final note inside the one that said, "Don't let anyone take your peace." Every night, I'd sit on the porch and look out at the trailer, bathed in the soft glow of the motion light. For once, that light didn't feel like a warning, it felt like a guardian. I realized then that revenge hadn't healed me. Justice hadn't, either. What healed me was understanding the simple act of letting go of the pain I'd carried for so long. Owen's truth hadn't destroyed me. It had freed me. When I thought of Miranda now, I didn't feel anger. Just sadness. She'd been consumed by her own lies for so long that she couldn't tell the difference between guilt and survival. I wasn't like her. Not anymore. I'd finally stopped living in the shadow of what was taken from me. I was living in the light of what I still had the strength to start again. As I watched the moon rise that night, the wind gently brushed against the trailer door, making it creak softly like it was saying goodbye too. But fate wasn't quite done with me yet. A week later, I received an envelope in the mail from Todd. The police said she'd confessed and that the matter was officially closed. I assumed that was the end of it. I'd done what I needed to do. I had my trailer back, my peace back, and I'd buried the last of the secrets at Blue Ridge Lake. I wasn't expecting to hear from anyone connected to that nightmare again. But one quiet morning, I walked to the mailbox and saw an unfamiliar envelope sitting among the usual stack of bills and flyers. It was addressed to me in neat handwriting I recognized instantly Todd's. For a moment, I just stared at it, my fingers hovering over the seal. Part of me didn't want to open it. I'd finally found calm, and his name felt like a gust of wind ready to stir up the dust again. But curiosity and maybe closure won. Inside was a folded sheet of paper and another smaller envelope tucked behind it. I unfolded the letter first. "Dear Hailey, I don't know where to start. I'm sorry for writing to you out of the blue, but I felt you deserved to hear some things directly from me, not through the police or the gossip around town. Miranda told me everything. After you left that day, she came clean about the trailer, the letter, and on her past. I wish I could say I was shocked, but in a way, I think I always knew something about her story didn't add up. You were right to expose the truth. If anyone else had done what you did, I would have been angry. But you didn't do it to hurt her, you did it to protect Owen's memory, and for that, I'm grateful." I stopped reading for a second, swallowing hard. It was strange seeing compassion written in his words. Todd had always been kind, but distant, a man who seemed tired long before this all began. Miranda is in counseling now. She turned herself in and agreed to pay restitution for what she did, even though most of it happened too long ago to prosecute. She's living with her sister in another state. I'm still here for now, trying to make sense of everything. I don't know if our marriage will survive, but for the first time, I'm not angry, just sad. I took a deep breath. The weight of those sentences was heavy but honest. Todd was a good man. He didn't deserve to carry her sins. She asked me to send you something. She said she couldn't face you, not after everything, but she wanted you to have this. That's when I noticed the smaller envelope. I set Todd's letter down and picked it up. It was sealed with a faint smudge of mascara on one corner, probably from her fingers. My heart beat faster as I slid a finger under the flap and opened it. Inside was a single handwritten note from Miranda. Her handwriting was shaky, uneven, nothing like the bold, confident script she used to have. "Hailey, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. I've spent the last few weeks replaying everything I did, every lie, every cruel thing I said to you. I don't know what kind of person I became after Owen died, but I know it wasn't someone he or you would be proud of. You were right, the trailer was never about money. It was about control. I wanted to take something from you because I couldn't stand how much you had survived when I couldn't even live with myself. Every time I saw you move forward, I saw what I wasn't brave enough to be." I paused, my throat tight. I could almost hear her voice in those words, quieter, smaller, stripped of the arrogance she once wore like armor. When I read Owen's letter, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: shame. Not because he exposed me, but because he still believed I could do better. You were the only person who held me accountable. You forced me to look at myself for what I truly was. I hated you for it then. I'm thankful for it now. I've started therapy, and I told Todd everything. He hasn't left, but he doesn't trust me yet. I don't blame him. I wouldn't either. If I could undo what I did, I would. I can't. But maybe I can spend the rest of my life trying to do something good with what's left. Thank you for not destroying me, even when you could have. Owen was right, you're stronger than both of us. I set the note down, staring at it for a long time. For the first time since this entire ordeal began, I didn't feel anger toward her. What I felt was something closer to sorrow and, maybe, acceptance. Todd's letter continued with one final paragraph. I don't know what your plans are now, Hailey, but if you ever need help fixing the trailer or just someone to talk to, you know where I am. I think Owen would want us all to move forward, not apart, but better. He always believed in the good that could come from hard truths. I see that now. Thank you for giving us both a chance to start again. Todd. By the time I finished reading, tears had already blurred the ink. I folded both letters carefully and set them beside Owen's framed note in the trailer. It felt right, like closing a chapter without slamming it shut. Over the next few days, I thought about what Miranda had written. I even reread Owen's letter again, trying to see it through her eyes. Maybe that's what forgiveness really was: not excusing someone, but understanding them enough to let their mistakes stop poisoning your peace. A week later, I decided to do one last thing. I donated a portion of the savings Owen had left the account he'd mentioned in his letter to a local women's shelter. The director's eyes filled with tears when I handed her the check. This will help so many, she said. I smiled softly. That's what it's for. When I left the shelter that day, I felt lighter than I had in years. As I drove home, I thought about how strange it was that everything had started with something being stolen and ended with something being given back. Owen had wanted me to know when I needed it. He'd been right. I didn't need the money, I needed closure. And that's when I finally understood what Owen meant by "you'll know when you need it." It wasn't just the envelope Miranda found, it was Owen's final test for both of us. The months that followed felt different, lighter. Somehow, though life still carried its quiet ache. The trailer sat at the edge of my property, polished and peaceful, like a monument to everything I'd survived. Sometimes, I'd sit inside with a cup of coffee, run my fingers across the glove box, and think about how something so small had changed everything. That compartment had held more than an envelope. It had held a truth that forced every person who touched it to face who they really were. For Miranda, it exposed guilt. For me, it revealed strength. For Owen, it had been his last act of faith. The trailer became my sanctuary again. I'd started taking short trips, nothing far, just enough to remind myself what freedom felt like. The first time I drove it out after getting it back, I was terrified it would break down, or that I'd find another reminder of what had been taken. But when I parked by the ocean one afternoon, rolled down the window, and felt the sea air hit my face, I realized it wasn't haunted anymore. It was healed. Inside, the glove box was still the same, though I'd lined it with soft fabric and tucked Owen's letter safely inside a protective sleeve. I never locked it again. It didn't need to hide secrets anymore. It was a reminder that truth, no matter how painful, isn't something to bury. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, I took out the letter one last time. I read Owen's words slowly, every curve of his handwriting now as familiar as my own reflection. He hadn't written that letter to break me. He'd written it to prepare me, to remind me that strength isn't found in holding on, but in letting go. After I finished reading, I whispered into the quiet, "You did what you could, Owen." And so did I. That night, I began something new. I opened my laptop inside the trailer and started writing my story, our story. At first, it was just meant to be therapy, a way to organize everything that had happened. But as I wrote, I realized how many people might be living with their own stolen trailers, their own secrets, guilt, or buried truths waiting to surface. So I kept writing. A month later, I launched a small online blog. I called it The Glove Box Letters. It wasn't about revenge or tragedy, it was about healing, truth, and resilience. Each post shared a story of finding strength after betrayal, inspired by my own journey but written to help others find theirs. I didn't use real names, but the lessons were real enough. The blog started small, just a few readers, then a few hundred. Soon, I began getting messages from people around the country. Women rebuilding after loss, siblings mending broken trust, and even one man who said he'd confessed a 20-year-old lie to his brother because of something I'd written. Each message reminded me that Owen's letter had done more than heal me, it had rippled outward, touching lives he never could have imagined. Sometimes, when I read through those messages, I'd think of Miranda. I didn't know where she was, but I liked to believe she was finding her own version of peace. Todd had written once more, telling me she was volunteering at a community center, helping with finance workshops, teaching people not to make the same mistakes she had. I smiled when I read that. Maybe in her own way she'd finally opened her own kind of glove box. As winter faded into spring, I started taking the trailer farther, weekend road trips, visits to state parks, and quiet nights under wide, starry skies. Each journey reminded me of who I used to be and who I'd become. I took photos of the places I visited and pinned them along the trailer wall, building a collage of everywhere my healing had taken me. The last photo I added was from Blue Ridge Lake, the spot where Owen's ashes rested. I'd returned there on what would have been our 10th anniversary. I brought a single sunflower, his favorite, and placed it by the water where I'd buried the metal tin. Then I sat quietly for hours, listening to the soft waves. It didn't feel like mourning anymore. It felt like visiting an old friend. Back home, I made one final addition to the trailer, a small wooden frame that hung right above the glove box. Inside it, I placed a printed line from Owen's letter. "Do what's right, even if it hurts. I believe in you." Every time I drove somewhere new, that line reminded me that doing what's right doesn't mean winning. It means choosing peace over pain, truth over comfort, and growth over resentment. One evening, as twilight spread across the sky, I sat outside the trailer with a warm drink, watching the fireflies appear in the field. The world felt still. Finally, my life wasn't the same as it had been, but it was mine again, unshaken, unbroken, honest. If someone had told me a year ago that my sister-in-law would steal my trailer, that I'd uncover a hidden letter, and that everything I thought I knew would crumble only to rebuild stronger, I wouldn't have believed them. But that's the strange thing about truth, it shows up disguised as loss. The trailer had once been a relic of grief. Now it was a symbol of survival. And that glove box where everything began had become a reminder that sometimes, the smallest spaces can hold the biggest revelations. I closed it gently. That night, smiling to myself. And all it took was one stolen trailer, one envelope, and one final truth to set me free.